I want to begin by affirming that unanimously, and I think this is really important because I think this has gotten lost in the emotional and sometimes heated debate over this mural, that all 5 members of this council believe that Black Lives Matter in Chestertown. I and we have nothing but empathy, love, compassion, hopes, and aspirations for all minority members of this community, regardless of how this discussion ends this evening. I also want to acknowledge that we as a council have never hidden, and we all recognize that both Chestertown and Kent County have an ugly past regarding racism and bigotry that still reverberates strongly in our community today. I can say definitively and unequivocally that we currently have mayor through Ward 4, 1 through 5, the most progressive town council in the history, in our 315-year history. If given the chance to lead, we collectively, mayor through Ward 4, are ready to step up to the plate and work on the hard challenges we face in this current climate. I will also add that for the past month, all the oxygen in the room, and I mean all of the oxygen in the room, has been taken up by this one proposal. And in some ways, it's held us back from being able to do other things. So please keep in mind when we discuss this proposal, when we get a proposal like this that's unprecedented, something we've never done before, something that may fall into a gray area of our zoning and our ordinances, the town has a lot of different aspects that we have to consider before we approve a project. So things like the legality of the proposal, potential for legal exposure to the town, the long-term maintenance of a project like this, the possibility that this might get vandalized, the possibility this might set a precedent for other groups to ask to do the same thing. These may seem trivial to people at home, but for us, these are really important topics. And the reason why, and I've seen this over and over again with the town, is let's say this were to happen. We all go down, we paint a mural on the street, the paint dries, everybody's happy, everybody goes home. The mayor and council are still left behind doing the work. So if a week later, 3 months later, 6 months later, something were to happen to this mural, it always falls back to us. So we need to be very, very careful. And I also hope people understand that we have a fiduciary responsibility to 5,000 taxpayers in this town. And we need to take that very, very seriously.
I understand that you are saying that you want to rectify this. But for right now, the momentum of our community, as you have already said, this is our community. The momentum is low. And we are broken. And we had hopes that you would give us something right now. But that is such a misfortune because of whatever reasons, and I am hearing so many reasons as to why this could be a go. But again, we are here with another obstacle to hurdle, which is quite disappointing, not just with the Black community, but the white community as well.
When this proposal was submitted to the town, we got a letter from an attorney, Phil Hoon, challenging on legal grounds. When that happens, it is my job, it is in fact my duty as the mayor to see if that claim has validity. So I then eventually had a conversation with our council, said, look, is there any validity to this claim that painting one of these streets is not a legal action? And what I was advised, I'm just going to tell you what he told me, even though this is a really bad idea to do in a public setting like this, I'm going to do it anyway. He said, Chris, wait a minute, let me finish. He said, Chris, the town in its code basically adopted the code used for state roads. Any restrictions you have for painting a street on the state level apply to the town's code because you adopt their code. And what the state wants, and I understand this seems technical and a petty reason, but I didn't seek this out. This is something I had to do as a matter of just looking out for the town's taxpayer and not exposing us to legal liability. And I really hope people understand that. I'm not looking for reasons not to do this. I promise you. I support the movement and the message. But when my attorney says the state does not allow streets to be painted, they don't want basically like navigational markers to be covered over. They want uniformity in their roads. So the problem for me has never been about promoting this message. I'm happy to do it. I'm happy to paint banners. Maybe we can find a big parking lot that's technically not a road, like maybe at the marina or Wilmer Park. I could live with that. I would sign off on that. But when you want to do it on a road with double yellow lines and crosswalks, and if any of that is impeded, according to my counsel, that is not legal. And that sets the town up, not for a lawsuit that's kind of out there in the abstract, but I was responding to a letter from an attorney. Like, this is not something that I made up in my head to try to thwart your efforts. I, honest to God, support your efforts. I don't know how else I can refrain that. But as I said in my opening statement, I have a fiduciary responsibility to our taxpayers. If we get sued, and
Mr. Mayor, if I could please, the letter from Phil Hoon was actually submitted before we submitted the proposal, and it was based on the Historic Commission ordinances and the zoning ordinances. It had nothing to do with the state highway, and I don't know of any letter that has come in yet that has said they're going to sue you based on the State Highway Administration's manual on painting traffic control signs on the road.
I think we are at a critical time now that we all need to come together and unify on all fronts. All across this country, I hear the heartbeat of Black people. I need to say this first. I know when we say Black Lives Matter, and then some people get offended and they say all lives matter. Yes, all lives do matter. But if you were going down the street, all the houses on that street are valuable. But if one house is on fire, that particular house is the house that needs the most attention.
And I have looked at this upside down and inside out. I am a lawyer who's been practicing for 46 years, and a portion of my practice deals with constitutional law. I teach constitutional law, and I have come to the conclusion that if the speech is adopted by the city, by the town, and controls how it is rolled out and what the message is, then nobody else has any entitlement to claim equal time, because your speech as a town is not subject to First Amendment rights. You have an absolute right to say what you want to say and not say what you don't want to say.
Well said.
Happy to take any questions if anybody wants to. But I'm not addressing the state power issue, but I am very much intrigued by what I heard. But I am convinced that if the government adopts the message, even if it does not pay for it or does not paint it, but approves the design and the message and does so properly, that it will not be challenged successfully by anybody who wants a competing message on the city street.
It's now August 10th, and people are feeling like the town needs to make this gesture. It's not something else that a group of white people down in the historic district decide for the rest of the town. It's this, because people have coalesced around this from all parts of the town. And I take Barbara's point to heart. It is paternalistic. It is more of the same if we say, well, you can't have what you want, but here, this is more acceptable to us.
People have told me, including people in this group, oh, those laws don't matter. Oh, don't worry about that. It's interesting. I really appreciate Jim Astrachan bringing up this bit about public forum versus government speech. You know, when this idea was first raised to me, it was about, give us a permit to do this. Do you realize if we gave you a permit, that would not be government speech? What Jim is saying is that we have to adopt this. We have to have editorial control over this for this to be government speech. It's very important that we be in the proper box should we be sued. Because I do think we have to, there are lots of better things to do with our money, lots of better things to help with undoing racism than paying lawyers' fees.
Why BLM? Why now? Why Chestertown? In 1706, when Chestertown was founded, the American slave trade was the backbone of the colonial economy. Chestertown was a landing place for thousands of black people kidnapped in Africa and brought to the banks of the Chester River. We built our town on stolen labor and enslaved lives.
And I would just ask for you to think about that yourself. The extent to which you might say, oh, well, it's going to be very clear to my children. I support Black lives. I said I support Black lives. I came up with other alternatives to show that Black lives matter here. I want your children to read in this record and reflect on the fact that to truly show that Black lives matter is to vote in favor of the proposal that the Black lives in our community are asking for.
If we're going to do this, if I'm going to flip my vote, I really need assurances. I don't know how to get this, but if a Trump supporter comes the day after this paint dries and dumps 5 gallons of paint on this, which has happened in New York City 6 times, just in the last couple of weeks, are you guys really seriously going to come out there and deal with that every time? Because that is where the mayor and council are left holding the bag time after time. I've been in this business long enough and I've seen it too many times. This isn't apples to apples, but we just mowed over what had been a really nice rain garden in Wilmer Park for this very reason. It had been, the garden club had said, we're going to maintain this every year. And they did for a while. And it's been a while. The garden club is a great organization, and I'm not trying to besmirch them in any way. But this is not necessarily that we're not going to be left holding the bag, because this was not popular. I mean, I know you guys have done a way better job. There's been 2 opposers, and I don't know how many of you are here to support it. You've done a much better job presenting your case than the opposition. But we're the guys that generally get left holding the bag with stuff like this. Once the cameras turn the other way, once the big celebration is over, 2 months down the road, 5 months down the road, someone paints Trump 2020 over this thing. Are you guys really committing to maintaining this for 1 full year?
Yeah, so we have said
Yes.
many times, yes. The answer is yes. And
Yes.
the answer is yes. And we are not blind to the fact that it may be necessary repeatedly, but we have a lot of people who are committing to say, yes, they will repaint it. And I also would like to just mention that in
You
Cambridge,
have a ton of paint, Mariah. Do you have a lot of paint in your warehouse somewhere?
We'll buy extra.
Yeah, it's a mouthful, but there's been a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
That a unanimous vote?
That
Yes.
is a unanimous vote. Congratulations, gentlemen.